Hello and welcome everyone to Heal with Now webinar series. As we all know, September is the Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, a campaign to amplify awareness of suicide prevention. We also know that World Suicide Prevention Day is commemorated on 10th September, and this webinar is our little contribution for this cause. Today we have Dr. John Tang joining us as our guest. John is the founding president of Youth Work Association Singapore. He's also the executive director of CARE Singapore. He's a consulting trainer with applied suicide intervention skills training with Living Works Education Canada. And he's also a famous podcaster, the podcast by the name of Every Youth Matters. A very warm welcome, John. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here now today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to have you with us and to learn from you and to enable our audience also to learn few tips and techniques from you. So while there has been a marked increase in, awareness about mental health, but the topic of suicide is still a taboo and hush hush and a stigma and is not discussed that freely amongst the community, freely and openly. Even when it is discussed, there are a lot of wrong notions attached to it. So today we have John with us who will be, letting us know how this actually, why this is happening and what are the causes, what are the warning signs, whether and how it can be prevented or not. So as we all know that close to 800,000 people die by suicide per year, which is one person every 30 seconds. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in 15 to 29-year-olds globally. So since John is working with young people, so we have John with us. He's a subject matter expert. And I request all of you, whenever you feel like, asking any question to John, you can put it in the chat box. And going forward, I would request everyone to keep their mic on mute and keep their videos off so that we can have two screens only you can have that screen of myself and John there. So, John, we would like to start with asking this question from you. Why do people resort to suicide? Are there any specific causes that lead to suicide?
Okay, so Nev, maybe I thought it good just give a short introduction of myself, then to describe why I'm in this work, and as to, I wouldn't consider myself a subject matter expert, except that probably have some experiences and be very willing to share. So I've been working with young people since the late 80s in various capacities. And as of mid 1997, we started an organization that is called Children at Risk Empowerment, which then the acronym states CARE, right? So it's easy to say CARE, but it is not to be confused with the CARE with for relief agency and all that, right? So it has to do with the empowering of children at risk. So some people have asked me then what constitutes risk. To us, anything that is an obstacle or blocks the potential of a young person from blossoming or blooming is considered risk, right? So, and this includes not just behavior issues, but as well as lately and recently, dealings with mental wellness challenges. So on the topic of suicide, then it is about young people choosing that option because they can see no other way out, and perhaps they feel all alone. At the same time, they are desperate, and it's just a solution that they think is a solution to their pain and all that. So on a very broad basis, there are probably several reasons why different people would want to take their lives in this manner. But we can later discuss some of this. But they could also be just the fact that it is the most, or rather when faced with the options, and they look at it and say, perhaps this is the best option, one that takes away life, which goes against the grain of our default mode, which is to live. So it has to be a very, very heavy reason why would somebody want to take that option. So I like to approach it from the point of view that they are faced with very unsurmounting issues, or what they perceive as very unsurmounting issues that they cannot overcome, and therefore they will choose that, right, for various reasons, and later we can discuss more. But for me, it's painful because when I work with young people, and if you have brought up, from the 15 to 29 is the second most common cause of death, and I believe the first cause of death is road accidents.
Yeah.
Right. So taking one's life at, considering the age of 15 to 29, it must be that something is too big for them to handle for various reasons, right? So for me, working with young people and helping them to blossom and reach their potential, then this has become a great challenge for me. And it's become like, my goal is to ensure that no young person will have to go that route or choose that way. So that's my background from where I'm coming from. Is from the background of looking at youth potential and youth development. And so when faced with this big obstacle called suicide, then it's a very final step that a person who is in need of help has chosen. And which is why I'm so glad that today we have people, different countries tuning in, and just to find some more tips. We learn from one another, and I will encourage that. Maybe having some kind of exchange of ideas and information that we can, as a whole community, come together. Yeah, so that's just my introduction. And in answer to your question, Neff, probably many reasons, but one is just a feeling or the perception that it is not happening for them, and therefore they choose that option. Yeah.
So basically, unsurmountable pain coupled with hopelessness, worthlessness, where they feel that suicide is the only option left. So it could be a combination of causes, right?
And also the fact that they feel alone, that there is no one they can talk to, or perhaps feeling that no one would listen or understand, which is why we're going to talk about the stigma, the taboo, because it's so thick and it's so, sometimes it's so shameful that you don't want to talk about it. So in that sense, then they are cooped up in a world of, the bubble. It's so, it's a very stifling bubble that they just cannot get out because they just feel nobody is there for them.
Thank you. John, I would, as you requested, I would like all the participants, as John mentioned, let's make it a discussion. We need to learn from each other. So any one of you who would like to contribute to the discussion, they can raise your hand and we can probably unmute you and we can put your video on also, and you can join in the discussion, and that will be very enriching also. So John, we would also like to know that, are there any warning signs of suicide?
Okay, so perhaps I'll take it from another point of view. It's not so much like there's a whole list where we can checklist. It is possible, but maybe if we take it from the point of view of let's say we can be of help, right? So it is a loved one, or it's someone, maybe it's a colleague, or maybe it's somebody that we know of. And I think one of a very useful tool, not so much I won't call it scientific, yeah, but just hear me out. A useful tool is something that we all have, and it's called intuition. You know that feeling you have when you just feel that something is not right with him or her, and something is off, right? So it's not so much a warning sign that you want to check this off. There could be a few, right? And later I will just touch a little bit. But the first one is when you are with somebody you know, you love, or you are aware of, and you just feel like something's not right, right? Your gut feel, your intuition is a gut feel, kicks in. So from my experience, I can tell you, act on it. Act on it. Or it could be someone just in a corner, crying away quietly. It just helps you to go and then ask, are you okay? I mean, in fact, this is a buzzword or use, I think it's used in Australia where they ask the question, are you okay?
Wow.
It just takes a minute. It takes a minute to even broach that, ask that. So it's prior to even asking about whether there are checklist warning signs. So at the first gut feel, you know people better, right? I mean, in your own setting, you know them. And it will be something that you just go forth and you take it up and ask that question. So I would say that is act on your own gut feeling first. And we all hope that we are wrong, right? Honestly. But what if we are right? Something is really wrong, right? So, I mean, so you act on that. Then going on the warning signs. Now, the warning signs could be a whole host of them. For example, if we go into categories, broad categories, it could be what you see with your eyes, observation, something is off, maybe behavior, maybe, and this is a classic one when and some people have brought it up and they say that, you know, he has a prized collection of a hobby and he's giving it away. All right.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you giving it away? It's so precious to you. Why are you giving it away? It could be that, or it may not be. And later I'll tell you how you're going to distinguish that, right? It could be one of it, which is why I say we should avoid that checklist thing. It's when he's giving away and then you're like, oh, why are you giving away? It's so precious to you. Is everything all right? It only takes a minute to ask that, or even less than that. Are you okay? So I mean, you need to check that. So what you see, you're observing behavior, appearances. Are they unkempt? Maybe this person takes pride in his or her appearance, but suddenly is, you know, not taking care of them. Obviously, you can tell there's a difference, right? And once again, it's your gut feel, right? Intuition. Every one of us has that. It's just that maybe for us, for some, it's sharper, right? So what you see, and of course, what you hear, what they say. They might be saying things like, oops, it's all useless. The world is better without me. Now, these are big words. These are heavy words, right? You need to check it out. So if we run through the whole thing, there could be many, many such things, or they could be very innocent things, or it could be things like, wow, I feel so good today. It's opposite, right? So I feel so good today. It could be from someone who has been struggling for a long time, and you might even rejoice and say, wow, this is good stuff that you are today. So, wow, what happened? Right? So we ask questions like this. So I'm really going ahead of myself by saying that, you know, we act on what we see are warning signs, right? What we see, what we hear, what we feel, which is the big intuition thingy. We are checking in whether or not something is going on, and you just really feel that it's not. And all these big categories combined together, but in the course of it, there's some common threads that we can check in, and that would be the common thread would be that of they have lost something. It's connected to a loss, and that loss has meant a lot of things for them, and is then driving them to the point where we are going towards the edge where they are really looking, I mean, metaphorically, the edge of life, something that has pushed them because of their loss. Yeah, so we combine everything together. So it's not so much of a checklisting, but it is the whole thing that you need to check. So it's not about checklisting, but you need to check in with them by asking simple questions like, are you okay? What's up? Anything going on? Yeah, so if we were to check out Google and all that, we'll probably see a whole list of other warning signs, but of themselves and by themselves may not mean anything until we check in to find out what's going on.
Yeah, very true.
So,
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the signs can be explicit or not explicit. The main thing is that whether we are intuitive and we are working on our sixth sense, and if we feel that something is wrong, and then reaching out to the person. So reaching
Yes.
out to the person is key, is the first step to the prevention, awareness, and then reaching out.
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah. So there are some common notions about suicide in everyone's mind that we are now going to share some of those, and we would request you, John, to help us identify which ones are true and which ones are myths, because there is some common notion which is there in layman's term. Everybody talk about it, that if the person is serious about killing themselves, there's nothing you can do about it. Is it true?
Well, you see, so in interacting with such a statement, it would be that if we hold on to it, that there's nothing we can do, then what's the next step you will do? You will say, okay, I'll give up, right?
Give up.
So I'd like to approach from a life-saving point of view, and that is, yes, it may be true for some, but for some others may not be. The only issue is I don't know who, right? But if I come from the point of view, say, oh yeah, there's nothing we can do. He's just so adamant about it, right? Then we give up and we don't do anything. But if I come from the other angle of a life-saving angle and say, well, there could be some who are like that, but yet there could be others who are not. And I don't have the wisdom at the moment to decide. Neither should I come into the point of judgment to judge, right? Like, is this person, no point trying because he's totally, is a waste of time, right? So having said that, so coming from a life-saving perspective, I will not hold on to that view. And even if may be true for some, it does not mean that I give up trying. Yeah, because here comes then the whole, literature is informing us that for most people who have contemplated suicide, most people will want to live.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not so much about them wanting to end the life as it's about wanting to end their pain. But they can see no other option than to take the life because they can't see any way out of their pain except to take their life, for taking their lives. So having said that, then if most people want to find a way, if they can, right? And part of that is the obstacle is the stigma that they feel is around it that's preventing them from telling someone else, right? And so they are actually crying out for help in various ways. It could be the words they say, as I said, what you're hearing. It could be what you are seeing. It could be a cry for help.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, Nev. I'm not sure if I should tell you, because what you may not accept me. You might even condemn me in some circles that we are dealing with. When the taboo is so thick, maybe it's a reason of faith or spirituality or whatever religious belief that prevents them from opening up, right? So coming from that life-saving perspective, then I would say I would want to reach out. And even if the person is adamant, I believe that for most people, there will be a certain level of what we call not sure, ambivalence.
Yeah.
Because if they could find a way out, then they will not choose this option. The only problem is that they just cannot see the way out at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would dispel it by saying I won't say for sure, oh no, that is not a true statement, but it could be true for some, but not for others. But I don't know who. And my belief is that there are people out there who want help but don't know how to ask for it. Yeah.
Got it. So that brings to the other point, also the other statement which has been dispelled, like people who are suicidal, they actually want to die. They might not want to die. They do not want to live the life they are living right now.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
because the pain is so much to endure, and they are looking for a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the other statement, John, is that suicide happens on impulse alone. Is it true that it's an impulsive action?
In some cases, they could be
Mm-hmm.
where emotions are really taking control of their actions at the moment, where their decision making or impulse control portions of the brain is totally bypassed at that moment, that instinct. So it could be that. It could be that. And when faced with an accessible means to end their life, like very unfortunate cities like Singapore, we have lots of high-rise buildings that provide that kind of accessibility. The impulsiveness then with the accessibility could push them over the edge, right? Literally. But it's also some measure of pure desperation where emotions just cannot click in with reason, and is, reason just gets pushed to a side, and that's it. As what you mentioned, then looking for permanent, they may not be looking for permanent solution to a temporary, what could be a temporal problem or trigger or issue, but it happens, right? So yeah, in that sense it is. Are there warning signs that point to impulse?
Mm-hmm.
There again, debatable. There could be, or there may not be. But I guess it's the voice of reason that we need to train people, which is the second half that we're going to talk about, how to build resilience, right? So it's the voice that talks back to them, that positive talk that we need to inoculate in people, right? So to reduce their impulsivity. Yeah.
So is it right to say that the process moves through stages of ideation, gesture, planning, attempt? So it's not an impulsive action all the time, but yes, it could be. And there are other times when it is planned one, it moves through stages.
Well, I wouldn't know how clean cut stages would be,
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm overwhelmed because I have tried all the decision making methods. Maybe I have tried in my mind to look at all the alternatives, but they all don't look good, and my emotions then take the better of me, where I just cannot think, and the emotions, it's about crying out, I'm in pain, and the pain, end the pain? So this is the thought, the mantra that runs through their mind. And how do I end the pain? So I'm not so quite sure that there are stages, because if we do believe there are stages, then we might again have a checklist and say, oh, unlikely because he has not passed through. He cannot be in stage 3 because
True,
he didn't go
true.
through stage 2. No, I will want to avoid that, because one thing I've learned also, Neff, is that every person is unique. Every person is different. And even with the same person, particularly if you're journey with a person who have attempted a few times, there might be different triggers, different situations. So you cannot just say, okay, this is in a box, so I apply what's in the box and that's it. No, it doesn't happen that way. But what I found is that if they can be thought, okay, two things. One is with that self-talk that is running in their head all the time, that they can do self-checking. That's on the cognitive level, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is when they have someone who trusts them, someone who they can trust, someone who believes in them, and someone they believe in, to help them believe in themselves, having that journey so that if anything happens, they can open up without judgment. They are in a safe place to talk, right? And just be with them, right? It reduces that. So, and even the other person, if you okay, we use the term in a related manner, caregiver, let's say we call them a caregiver. So the caregiver can be watching out and looking out. It does level off their emotions. The regulation becomes stronger, right? So in that sense, it goes back then to people who are alert and people who are able to provide that safe space to hold them. It's almost like a holding space for that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So while you were speaking, John, what was coming to my mind that every person is unique and there is no clear-cut defined markers for, checklist which we can check. But there is one unique chord which runs through all of us, which is humanity and which is pain. If we can connect with someone's pain, if I can attune to someone's pain and I can empathize with that pain, then definitely I can pick up the cue and reach out to that person and say, are you okay? So
Yes.
that's the cue. That's the warning and trigger sign if I can pick it up. So I have to be in touch with my own humanity and be attuned to others as well.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And the last one, which is very, very common amongst, the layman, and when we talk about suicide, is that if we ask someone about suicide, we are actually planting an idea in their mind. Even if it's not there, we are actually putting a seed in their mind and they are going to then try it. So is it really true that we can plant an idea of suicide in someone's mind?
I'm often asked this question. So forgive me if I take it in a light-hearted manner. I don't mean to take it lightly, but it's just to show you what we have and what we don't
Yeah,
have. All right.
sure.
So Neff, I've met you here face to face, and I'm going to ask you, Neff. I'm going to kind of like tell you by the end of this webinar, you're going to give me $10,000. You think so? What do you think?
If I have and if you are, sorry, but I don't have at the moment.
So let's say you have, okay? But I'm
Okay.
going to just suggest to you in the
Mm-hmm.
course of this conversation we're having, I'm going to say, Neff, you're going to give me $10,000.
Yeah, only if I want, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the catch to it, all right? So for most parts, it is going to be a bit difficult just to have that influencing thought planted and then acted on. Particularly, all right, this is worth more than $10,000. This is about your life. So by asking, by broaching that, particularly from the point of view, as I said, we are tending to somebody's pain. Now, this is a different thing altogether. If I'm in pain and I'm so muddled up, and trust me, they are not going to be able to think straight, they're just going to feel the pain. But if somebody were to ask, and if they are on the verge of actually, or they are contemplating, they're on the verge, somebody asks that question, gives them the permission to talk about it first. And even if they had not such a thought, then it tells them that, wow, you have noticed my pain and you want to ask me about it. I feel safe enough to talk to you. Even I have not contemplated that. And from the literature, from the research, it has shown that it's not about just me talking and then, if I am not thinking about it and someone were to ask me and I say, wow, that's a good idea. No, it doesn't work in that manner. So it's a myth that has shown to be dispelled. But I think the more important point is that a person who is in pain and suffering, receiving that kind of caring and concerned attention. Now, of course, I'm not talking about, it has to be asked in a respectful manner,
Right.
not in a condescending or condemning manner, but in a manner that attends to the person's pain and the moment. Then it clears the way, or it makes the way easier for the person to talk about it, right? Rather than just say, wow, this is a good point, you give me a good suggestion, I'm going to act on it. The research shows otherwise.
Yeah, it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah. So I hope that, it can be very clear then that this is actually a helpful step, right? So it follows through with the previous question of us asking, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you all right? And then asking directly, like, wow, are you thinking of suicide? And sometimes they would say no, but then you feel they've not really been open and honest. Ask again. You ask them again. You say, I'm really concerned. You feel like, you've been struggling with this, and you said this. Remember, you said these words that, and so I'm just following up. Yeah. So in that manner, you are attending to them. You are showing that you care. You are not condemning them, and then you listen. Yeah.
So being direct actually opens up the way for another communication, and they might open up and they might feel that there is hope and someone cares, that
Yes.
kind of feeling.
Yes.
Wow. And one more thing, John, I would like to ask you before we move to the next segment of resilience.
Yes.
Can suicide be prevented?
Whoa. Well, that's a difficult question actually to answer. I'll tell you why. Because suicide is the means for a person to, or what they feel is a solution to their situation, right? So it's probably triggered by something, or it could have been triggered by something really deep from before. And if it's not resolved, then we are trying to prevent them from taking their lives because of that, but we may not be in the capacity to solve the bigger issue yet for now, right? So prevention in that sense, if we spot it, we can redirect. And if a person has a plan, we can help to dismantle it by attending to them safely in a safe place. So in that sense, yes, but the bigger issue may not have been solved yet. A longer term run may be needed, maybe through therapy or counseling, right? But then that moment where they have contemplated a plan, well, there are steps that we can take to dismantle or hold that plan until they are in a safer place. So that is possible. So then again, it's about a longer journey with them and understanding where they are from and helping them. Yeah.
So joining them where they are at the moment. So could be crisis intervention or therapeutic intervention or both, and then journey together
Yes.
with them.
Yes. Yes.
And now moving to the next part of the segment, which is building resilience in teenagers. I was actually contemplating, can resilience be actually built and can it be learned?
Yes. Um, from my experience, then if we think of resilience, if we think of resilience as a muscle,
Mm-hmm.
then it has to be built. It has to be exercised. And it can be taught. There are certain things that can be taught, and it is a confluence of many factors. The way I look at it, for example, in broad categories, I would think then working on the cognitive processes for one, right? The self-talk that is occurring in a person's mind. If we start with them young, and for example, there's this big concept idea called growth mindset. You may have heard about it, right, by Carol Dweck. So it's growth mindset simply means that we, as opposed to having a fixed mindset where we cannot grow beyond that, growth mindset says that we can develop and grow, right? But it requires certain positions in our mind. For example, just having that belief that there is always a way, there's always a way, then tells us that we need to find a way. So no matter what you are facing, there's always a way. So we just need to find a way, and we need to not give up. We need to put our effort in it, right? So that is the practice. So that starts from a belief. So, but if a belief is that, wow, I'm useless, I can't do anything good, you catch yourself saying that, and therefore we practice reframing. We catch ourselves, and sometimes we do, right? I mean, we might have a bad day and bad thoughts, and you start thinking, I'm useless, I can't do anything right, and you catch yourself saying that. No, that's not true, and it's reframed. Now that is with the idea then that we have these processes going on ourselves. We have that clearly in our minds, but we need to be reminded, and that's where the social part comes in, where parents, you check your child saying negative talk and reframe that, right? You tell them no. One of the big concepts in growth mindset is a 3-letter word called YET, Y-E-T. So when you hear your child saying, I can't get it right, and you pause for a while and say, yet, I don't know how to solve this puzzle yet. So the yet is linked to the idea that there's always a way. If we don't know how to do it, it's because we have not learned how to do it, right? And we have not learned how to do it now. It does not mean we don't know how to do it forever. We have not learned it yet. So a parent can help the child reframe, constantly hearing out, checking, right? And guess what? When you go through failure, all of us have gone through failure. How do we accept failure? The idea, yeah, it sucks. It's painful, right? It's not nice to fail or lose a match, right? But here's where we practice, we reframe. But then, having said that, just the thought processes alone is not enough. They need to boost up with some emotional support then, because there's pain, there's loss. It stings for a while, right? But then emotion comes in. So it's all about coming together, wrapping it up in a whole big package trying it out and accompanying and journeying. Now, having said that, there will be some people who require additional resources and support professionally, either medically, psychologically, maybe medical intervention, psychiatric and help and all that, through medication to find the balance, to cope, then go through it. But you still need that emotional support. So the fact that a child may have been suffering from trauma means that then that trauma has to be addressed through healing somewhere for the recovery process, followed by emotional support and reframing, right? I mean, if you're a psychotherapist, you probably practice cognitive behavior therapy, then it's about change the way you think, you change the way you feel, you change the way you feel, you change the way you think, and you change the way you act, right? So it goes back, then it is a whole cycle of exercising that. So I've been working with young people and working with young people who work with young people, right? It's a matter of giving them the whole, walking with them, journeying with them, letting them fail forward, right? So we hear that failure is not fatal, right? It's not final, but it gives you feedback so that you learn, right? When you fail, you actually can win, because if you learn, then you have already won, right? Because then the next step becomes easier. So, but they need that kind of support. So similarly with, when we understand this process of pain and loss that is kept in and not addressed properly, not talked to, spoken to for healing to take place, then it becomes a wound that's festering and a trigger comes on, right? So, and this is where people around are alert. Back to the intuition thing, we should open up, today. Aware, alert, act on it, right? Don't hesitate, ask. Yeah, so I mean, so it's not about, and never go to a child and say, why can't you be like your brother? No, because back to the same thing, every child is different, every child is unique. But when we attend to that and, okay, pick yourself up, I will be here with you, let's journey together, let's walk through the pain. And so they learn, wow, okay, I will fail, but it's all right. What did I learn? What did I learn about myself? I am not shy to ask for help, because I know that help will come, and then we journey together. So resilience is not a solitary exercise. It is an exercise that is held within, better still, a community of trusted people. So it's not about just the child. We place the expectations on the child as saying, you should know better. What were you thinking? No. So it's more of attending to their pain and moving on with that, with the right cognitive processing.
Got it. So basically attunement first, when you address to that pain, and then the methods could be anything, could be CBT, DBT, any technique. But the first is how you attune to that pain with the child, and then resilience comes next. Healing comes first, So it's healing and then growth mindset, and then you thrive. So healing has to take place first, pain has to be addressed, and then we move on to the other steps of growth mindset. Wonderful, wonderful. So apart from cognitive reframing, I felt that when we do the reframing part, there is more of neuroplasticity also going on for the child, right? And before the child takes on the capability of doing the reframing himself as a community, and before the community, I think the family, the caregivers come first. So the circle widens as we go along. So first the family, and then the community, maybe school, maybe peer group, and then the city, the place where he's living, the nation as a whole is resilient.
I like to make 2 points here. It's particularly important, and yes, sometimes I get into trouble with adults and parents because having said all this,
Mm.
what really works is actually modeling.
Mm.
So
Yes.
a child, a teenager, an adolescent learns from modeling. So you
Very
can
true.
come up the best mantra tips from the books, you know, all the gurus and all that. And you
Mm.
tell your child that do what I say, but not do what I do. It's not going to fly.
It's not going to work.
So you reminded me then that modeling within that community, right?
Mm.
And because they're going to look at us as adults
Yeah.
and we fail, right? So how are we handling our own failures,
Right.
right? And then they're going to see. The second point I'd like to make, because it's with children and adolescents, particularly with neuroplasticity, the brain, the wiring,
Mm.
becomes very, very important for adolescents, because research shows that quite a number of mental challenges, illnesses in adults actually started their journey in adolescence. So that development takes a long time, but it starts around that. And if they can learn to rewire with support, that it becomes at the critical point. And all the more we are trying to demystify and take away the stigma for teens to be able to talk to someone, to ask for help, because it is important. If they treat it early, if they do have an illness, right, or a disorder, treated early helps them better, right? And because they could be reluctant in asking for help. So that whole thing then, which is why we are having this conversation today,
Exactly.
it's an effort to try and tell out there, spread the word, talk to somebody. It only takes a minute. Yeah.
So awareness is the first step. That's why we are here. That's why we are talking about it, so that it becomes a point of discussion in families also. When we are talking, we don't taboo it, we don't stigmatize this thing. And if we feel that there is a need, we feel that there is something wrong, it's better to check out. It's better to reach out and ask them that, are you okay? So as John mentioned, he gave us a very good word, yet, which is for reframing. So which comes very handy, we can use as parents and as caregivers to check out on them and help them reframe, because they might be in a position where they are not able to reframe for themselves, so we can help them. And secondly, which is a very, very important thing which John mentioned, and I would like to mark it again, is modeling. Unless we do the right things, unless we model how we are living, it's difficult for a child to put it in their own lives and idolize it or probably follow it also. So if we show them the right path in through our actions, through our behaviors, and we are walking the talk, then actually it makes sense to them also. Okay, at this point in time, I would like all our parties, I'll invite all my participants to actually put their questions in the chat box if they have any. I can see one, and I would like to ask John. The question is, are suicidal tendencies inherited? Given that there is no mental illness involved, is it genetic?
Um, so far from what I know of, right, it's not like tendencies are inherited. If it has happened in a family, and this is the point of modeling, the response to suicide becomes very telling. Like if there had been a suicide in the family, and that is very, very painful, how did the family deal with it would be very telling in a young person's mind in getting that. But if whether or not such tendencies are inherited, for me personally, reading the literature and just from my limited experiences, I personally do not think so. But if there are history of maybe certain illnesses, they could be, but it is more about how it is handled. And even if it is, okay, I can't say for sure that this may not be, but even if it is, then there are ways to address them. because we can rewire. The concept of the brain being malleable, particularly there are certain periods in a child's life, childhood, early childhood, age of 6, right? And then the other one is the teenage years, the adolescent years, where pruning is taking place in the mind connection. That's when lots of learning can be taking place. That's when it's the best time. So handling teens, I know it's difficult. It's all difficult to just communicate with teens sometimes, but it has to be done. And so my take on this is that I personally don't think so, that there's an inheritance that we receive, but there could be certain pathways of modeling that have already been infused in them. Like for some families, they may not even talk about it. So how do you deal with issues? We don't talk about it. Anytime something comes out, I don't know, we don't talk about it here. So what do you learn? You learn not to talk about it. And when you hit a storm, what do? You don't talk about it. So what happens? Then the wounds fester. So it could be that pathway built as a pattern. But here's the good news. It can be addressed. It can be addressed. It can be redirected. We can learn. Remember growth mindset? We can learn. Our minds are more capable than what we give credit for sometimes, right? So I believe, yes, we can address it.
So suicide is a more learned behavior than genetic if mental health is not contributing factor. Having family history provides the person an access to suicide and problem-solving situation. Research from the US, because I'm reading from a chat, I got some message. Yeah, 1 second. Okay. A lot of times for these individuals, it is also because the trauma of witnessing the suicide as well as the difficult family dynamics that were not dealt with, that heightened suicide ideation. So I think that needs to be addressed. And then we have and then we have a question: how do you approach someone who tends to use suicide as a threat?
As a threat?
Is it possible? Right. Is it, are they using it as a threat or attention-seeking behavior?
Okay, so two things here, often associated together, but I think as a threat possible. Okay. If you don't do this, I am going to, right? So when the person learns to do it, all right, so I think we need to draw the line. We need to put the boundary, because we need to talk about suicide. It's a very final thing. I mean, it's very, the finality of it when it is completed, because it's death, right? So it has to be very serious. So sometimes that's when in the midst of that emotional roller coaster or what's going on, the turbulence, it may be brought up. But then again, during calm moments, it has to be this. It has to be handled in this manner. All right, I hear you. You must be very upset that you want to use the word suicide. But remember, we talked about it, because suicide is final, right? Unless you really, really think, then we still have to talk about it. But we do not raise it up. Now, I understand you may have been very hurt emotionally, or then you might be looking for attention. Then let's deal with it. Let's not use it as a threat, right? Now, there are sometimes some people may think that this is attention behavior, attention-seeking behavior. Then we address the need for attention, because the need for attention is one of the very basic drives of human behavior, right? The need to be seen and a need to be acknowledged, that drives to attention-seeking. It may not have been given, so we address that as is. But suicide is always brought up and shown and then respected, that this is a very serious topic. All right, it's not that we can't talk about it. We can talk about it, but it must not be associated with other things, not to be confused or not to be wrapped up as a threat. It needs to be decoupled. separated, and say, yes, we will talk about it to address that portion, but it should not be mixed up with something else. So then we go back and then talk about the emotional need that's not been addressed. Yeah. So in that manner, we don't brush it under the carpet, but we park it correctly and we address that.
So bring it up at the right moment, at the right time, and address it in a right way. You know, so this all things have to be in alignment.
And it's always good if I can share this trick with you
please.
guys. Remember time out, not only for kids, for adults. Time out. Takes about 20 minutes, okay, for the prefrontal cortex to take control, because your limbic system, your emotions, your everything, your adrenaline, everything is high, and you're upset and all that, right? Takes about 20 minutes. So when that happens, it will be helpful to say, you know, I'm not in a position, as I tell my spouse sometimes when I go off the handle, I say, dear, I'm sorry, I'm limbic at the moment. I just need some time. And then guess what? You cool down. As you cool down, then you look at things differently, right? Why? Because your prefrontal cortex then has had the time and space to look at your situation and issues. Yeah. So, I mean, this is helpful stuff.
Yeah. So that's the best part of being therapists. We can talk to our spouses like that our limbic system is working right now. Let me go back to my prefrontal cortex and then I'll talk to you. Yeah, that's nice. So I'll bring it back to the point that resilience is the buffer against the risk of suicide. Resilience is from inside out and starting from the core of one's self-perception in relation to the world and how one gains self-esteem, and suicide is preventable, right?
Yes, but in addition, yes, inside out, yes. But remember, some people will need additional resources.
Additional support.
So the support comes into, and for parents, I would say, don't be too quick to rescue your children. Yeah, because sometimes you like, oh no, I don't want to see him hurt and all that. I know that, yeah, but if you're too quick to rescue, what is being built in the wiring will be that, oh, don't worry, you know, daddy or mommy will come to my rescue, but no. So don't be too quick to rescue, but yet don't be too slow to like, oh, too bad, you know, but provide that kind of safety and yet challenge at the same time.
Yeah. So family needs to be attuned to the teenagers in order to address these issues. At this moment, John, do you want us to share the resources which we were talking about?
Oh yes, please. In commemoration, maybe you will share the screen and do it. I'll just speak to it. So in commemoration of World Suicide Prevention Day, which is on the 10th, right? And this is by WHO as well. Some other agencies, they do it like World Suicide Prevention Month, right? So this wonderful resource is available on the net, and it says it takes a minute. So you take a minute to look out, take a minute to learn about resources. It is freely available, but it can be life-saving. So I will urge you, I will encourage you. It's available on the net. Just check it out. World Suicide Prevention Day. There are a lot of resources. And I know even in Singapore, a lot of agencies are talking about it. Suicide prevention, talking about reaching out and learning all these skills. It's a wonderful. And because I train with Living Works, you will want to consider Living Works. Let me see, the Living Works education.net. It's a Canadian site. I don't have the URL on top of my head, but they have a wonderful online course that's called START, S-T-A-R-T. And you can learn how to be alert and learn how to ask the question online, right? I think at the moment, they're charging something like $20 for the course. It's an online course, right? And it's available now. Also partly because in recognition of suicide prevention, right? So these resources are available. I really strongly encourage you to just use them. Yes.
Thank you so much, John, for your efforts and for all your time today. It was really, really informative, and the resources you have provided and the way you have explained to us how we can actually go about it, how the resilience can be built, and how suicide is preventable. Not only we have to work as a society together, but first it starts from home as families. We have to be attuned to our own humanity and then to the humanity of our family members, attuned to the pain and how important it is for us to be empathetic, for us to be empathetic and then attune to someone else. So this was really, really an excellent discussion. And thank you so much for your time. I would request at this point, if someone else, anyone wants to ask any question, please feel free to ask before we end the discussion. I think as of now, no questions. So we'll end it here. Thank you, John. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. And
Thank you.
thank
My
you, everyone,
pleasure.
for joining. Bye.
Take care.